Hello, my name is Dr. Shambles and this is my OP06 guide for Red Purple Law. Now, before I watch this video, I just want to say that this guide is more focused for beginner players. Even so, I go over my deck profile, the one I've been using, so in case you want to stay to watch it out to get some ideas for yourself. Not only that, I go over some good tips, so even if you want to stay to maybe find out something that you don't know, I really recommend it. With that said, I also want to say that this guide will cover most of all my playstyle and my game plan on what I want to do with Red Purple Law. And deck profiles as well as playstyles when it comes to Red Purple Law are very subjective to your playstyle and to your locals, so make sure you adapt for those. Let's get into the guide. Now, this guide will go over some very important things. The strengths and weaknesses of the deck. This is where the deck shines the most and where it struggles the most. Then I'll be going over my deck profile. This is where I show you the cards I chose and why I chose them. And right after I'll talk into some cards to consider. This means you guys can, I'll be giving you examples of very popular cards that although I do not use, and I will explain the reason why I do not use, you can and should consider to play them in case they are more suited for your playstyle. So keep them in consideration. After this, I'll be going over my game plan. This goes in correlation with my playstyle. Although this is most general what you want to do Red Purple Law, I, for example, just giving you a heads up, I am a much more aggressive player than normal. So I do adapt my game plan to my playstyle. After I go over my game plan, I'll be showing you guys what the starting hand should look like, what you guys want to see, what's really important to see, and what's not so important to see. After that, after we go all over this, I'll be talking about the matchups. Now, I won't be going over every single matchup, but I'll be going over a pretty good amount. These are the matchups that I believe will be the most popular in the set of OP06. Not only that, I believe some of these are the toughest matchups for Red Purple Law. So yeah, I'll be giving you some tips and what you want to do against these matchups. Strengths and weaknesses. Strengths. Board control. Thanks to your leader ability of taking away board as well as building board, you can have a good amount of board control. Obviously, this comes in correlation with your deck, but this board control helps you with the type of deck that it is. So this is one of the biggest strengths, if not the biggest strength of the deck. Not KO effect removal. Now, many cards cannot be KO'd. Now, thanks to your ability of bottoming deck those cards, it means they are not KO'd, so you can get around many effects. Do keep in mind there are some cards that cannot just leave the field. Their specific effect is this card cannot leave the field in some condition. But still, not being a KO ability and bottom decking comes really handy into, for example, the black color, where the black color is really strong on recycling cards from trash. So instead of you sending them to the trash, but sending them to the bottom of the deck, is a very big plus to you. Not only this, in OP06 the black color will rise in popularity, so this is a very good strength. And last but not least is the pressure. Now you do insane pressure in correlation with your board control. I already told you, your leader ability lets you take away board as well as build it. This builds an insane amount of pressure, and if you set up your final turn or ending turn to finish the game really well, you'll see that this pressure is something that many players cannot control and many players cannot keep up with. So it's a very good strength. Now, weaknesses. Math. So the reason why this is here is because although this deck is very fun, you do need to be very careful with your Dawn that you have active, with the Dawn that you'll have next turn, and with your opponent's Dawn that are active and even rested. Keep in mind that their cards in hand and your cards in hand. Although you obviously most of the time you need to keep up with this with every single deck that you play, Red Purple Law is a deck that if you make a little calculation mistake, you'll find that the consequences to be very severe. So you need to, for example, you need to watch out for the Dawns that you'll be regenerating through the turn. I mean, there are plays that I've realized after I watched the replay that I could have regenerated the Dawn and have 3 Dawn, up to 3 Dawn on the next turn that I didn't because I played my hand badly. Or in not the correct order. So this is just for you to keep in mind that the Dawn that you regenerate, the Dawn that you use, and the Dawn that you shuffle back into the Dawn deck with your ability is very important to do it in the very specific and most optimal order. Next is Starve. Now, thanks to the Radio card, which I'll be going over in my deck profile, you don't struggle with this as much. Still, it's still a problem. This is what I said with the math. You need to watch the attacks you can do, you need to watch the cards in hand at all times. If your cards in hand are starting to deplete and you see your opponent starting to starve you, you need to watch out. Obviously, I'm saying this, but when you come into that situation where your opponent starves, even with Rage, it will be very consistent. Like you'll be going over that situation more times than you would like. So Starve is a problem on the deck. Thankfully, Reiju does help you a lot with this, but it's still something that you'll struggle a little bit through the game. And next is consistency. Now, again, Reiju is a very good card to kind of resolve this problem, but it still is a very big problem. Like sometimes your hand, you'll just not see what you most need, even with the Reiju draw through card effect. So this is just to keep in mind. Thankfully, all these two last weaknesses have been going down a lot thanks to the Reiju effect. And there are some other ways that you can obviously go around this. But still, although this problem has been resolved a little bit, it's still there on the deck. So this is something you need to keep in mind. Deck profile. Now, what you are seeing right now is the deck profile that I've been using. Now, this deck is not my finished deck, but I believe it's a pretty good deck to go over and a pretty good deck to start with. As the meta evolves in the West, the deck profile will probably evolve as well, but I believe this is a good start. So, now I'll be going over every single card in my deck and why I chose the ratios and why I chose this card over some others. First of all, it's Otama. 3 copies of Otama. The reason of 3 copies of Otama, the 3 copies is because the deck, in my opinion, struggles a little bit with space. And I believe Otama is kinda needed. There is a card that I'll talk to you guys in the cards to consider that could replace this Otama, but I decided to go with Otama because she's very good at early game. And if you can get your early game going, most of the time you win. So I decided to go with Otamas and I go with 3 because thankfully she's not as needed at 4 as she used to be. Next is 4 Rush Zoros. Now this card is incredibly needed, especially on my playstyle. I like to be very aggressive and very flashy, and this card will sometimes, if you need to save Dawn and you cannot use your leader ability, because again, if you do your calculations right, and your Dawn will be too depleted if you use your ability that turn, you can always just play a Rush Zoro, maybe attack with and attack with him to get some pressure in, even though, and then, I don't know, like he comes a lot in case you can't just use your leader ability to build board faster, so you just drop him, make a swing, and he also comes very handy in very late game, as you can keep him in hand and use your leader ability to put him on the field for an extra swing. This will catch your opponents off guard. The meta on OP06 will be very consistent of board removal. So sometimes having a guy where you can just drop and swing and he'll probably get removed next turn. Still, it's a pretty good value thanks to his rush ability. Next is for Shiraya. Now, Shiraya is an incredible needed card for one reason. Every time your leader swings, especially if it's a 6k swing, you can block with Shiraya, as his effect is he'll gain as much attack as your opponent leader is for the rest of the turn. Yeah, for the rest of the turn. So if you block with him, if your opponent's leader makes a 7k swing, let's just say it like that, you can block with him and he'll transform his power into 7k, which means you don't need to use as much counter as you would need. So yeah, he's pretty good. Not only that, him being able to, again, swing into 6k leaders normally without having to attach Dawn will come in handy many times. He's searchable by Buena Fiesta, which we'll be going over. So he's a searchable card, a blocker, and a very good swinger. Although he's a 3 cost, which means he can get removed by the black color very easily, but he's still a very good card. Next is Raise Max. I play only 2 Raise Max because I already have 4 Gordon. If you cannot afford Gordon, just buy 4 Raise Max and 2 Gordon. So yeah, you just need to trade it up a little bit. Because I already have 4 Gordon, there's no need for me to play 4 Raise Max. So he's at 2 because of that, also because of space on my deck. He's searchable with Buena Fiesta, and he's incredibly good on the early, mid, and late game. Like, pretty much a 1 cost, minus 3k power depletion is just really good on this deck with your leader ability. So although I only play 2 because of the space of the deck, if you guys go into EB01, you'll see that you're actually gonna start playing him at 4. So I'm just gonna give you a heads up on EB right now, because you might want to buy for him and for a Gordon either way. Next up is the Gordon. As you guys know, well, I already told you, it's pretty much a raise max, but since I already got the 4 Gordon, I play 4 and 2 raise max, and both are searchable for benefit. So going over it, Promo Law, still a very good card. Still is my favorite card of the deck, in case you don't know. He is my absolute favorite card, although his art is very shitty. But he still is very good for early game, and depending on the matchups, for example, red and yellow is good on mid game. Not only that, he became searchable thanks to Buena Fiesta. He was already searchable thanks to Searcher Law, but I believe with Buena Fiesta the chemistry went up, because now you play much more film characters, and Buena Fiesta just searches all of them. So yeah, Promo Law, very good card for early mid game, and sometimes when you just can't. Sometimes he comes in clutch more times than you would admit, actually. Sometimes that 2k depletion on play will catch people off guard even on late game. But yeah, you'll probably be using him more on early and mid game. Next is Captain Kid. Now, this Captain Kid is incredibly needed. You just need to play 4. There are some people that actually cut him. I just don't agree with that, because his ability that every time, once per turn, every time you deplete your Dawn, when you shuffle Dawn back into the Dawn deck, he'll just regenerate 1 active Dawn for free. So that's just insane chemistry with your Law ability, with your leader ability. So he's very needed. Not only that, he's a blocker and a 6k at that. So yeah, he's very good. I actually like to use him very aggressively instead of blocking with him. But obviously there'll come times where you do block with him. I mean, that's his function. Next is 4 Rageus. I mean, if you guys saw on the menu section of the video, Rageus just helps you a lot with the weaknesses of the deck. Every time you have less Dawn than your opponent and you have 5 cards or less, you'll just draw 2. That's it. She's just needed. She's a 4 cost, that means you can play her even with your leader ability. So yeah, there's not much to say. She's just an incredible card that just helps to cover the weaknesses of the deck, as well as building pressure. So yeah. Next up is 1 Queen and 1 Queen only. Now, the reason why I decided to just play this Queen is sometimes Rageus just doesn't appear in my hand at all during the game, and this Queen comes in clutch. Again, more times than I would like to admit it. So yeah, I'm playing right now just 1 Queen. Just 1 Queen is very needed. Not needed, sorry. It's not very needed, but I do like to play that extra Queen. But thankfully, he's not needed in this deck anymore. I do decide to play him, but if you can't afford him, in the cards to consider, I'll just explain some other cards that you could play instead of him. 5 cost, 6k leader, as well as giving you some draws. And hand recycle, in case you break. So yeah, that's very good for me, and I do like to play 1. Next is Ein. Now, I love Ein. She's just a very good card that has insane chemistry with Beppo. I'll get to him in a second. There's not much to say. On play, she just generates a Dawn. She just gives you 1 Dawn. It's very simple, but when I go over the game plan and in some matchups, you guys will see that this will be very, 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 very powerful. The fact that she just gives you a Dawn, no matter what, will come in handy. So, and she's a 4 cost, this means you can use her with your leader effect to build board. So yeah, she has insane chemistry in the deck, as well as being film, so she's searchable by Buena Fiesta. Which, speaking, is the next card. I play 4 copies of Buena Fiesta. Well, he's a 2k counter as well as a searcher, so not much to explain. He searches almost every card in your deck. So I'm just not gonna explain much of him. She's just a really good early card to search, and mid to late game he's a 2k counter most of the time. But yeah, Sometimes his search does come clutch in late game, but most of the time it's just a 2k on late game. Next is Shashin Penguin. Well, this card is a staple. I mean, if you're at 3 or less Dawn, they just regenerate 2 Dawn on play, and he's a 2k counter. Not only that, again, like the fact that he's a 4 cost has a lot of synergy with their leader effect. So yeah, most of the people already know why this card is very strong. It has insane chemistry early game and a little bit on mid game. But early game, this is one of the strongest cards to have actually. Next, it's 2 Blocker Law. I still believe you're gonna need the Blocker Law. You can play one of them and maybe take one copy for other cards that you like, but I still believe you should play at least one. The reason is, this is the only card you have to control the hand size of the opponents. There are some colors like green and yellow that take advantage of taking lives early to build hand size and just have insane cards in hand, and then you just can't come back. They can starve you very easily with that. Although there are some strategies that I'll be going over to counter that, this card just helps you a lot with that even with the strategies. So you play this and you take away 1 Dawn, and if your opponent has 7 or more cards in hand, they discard 2 cards. Not only that, remember, even if you play him just as a blocker, your opponent needs to respect it. Because if they keep too many cards in hand, they never know when you're gonna drop the second one. So yeah, even if you play one, they can really afford to like, oh, maybe it's just playing one and I'll just keep adding cards in hand. They really cannot do that. So I play 2, it helps me a lot. He's a 4 cost, by the way, so it does have synergy with your leader effect as well, but you can use him most of the time as these 2 ways, as either to get his effect or to bluff his effect. Next is Beppo, which is the best card in your deck. Every time you swing, when you put him on the field, if you have less on than your opponent, you regenerate it on, and every time you swing, you do this as well. So yeah, this card has, as already I said, insane chemistry with Ein and many other cards. So he's just one, if not the best card to regenerate on. So you play him at 4, obviously. Not gonna explain much of him. And last but not least, it's Fire Fist. I still play 2 Fire Fists because, well, Blue-Black Sakazuki is gonna be very popular still, if not even more popular actually. So this card, in case you don't know, counters the Rebecca blocker of his deck. Rebecca is a blocker with 0 power, and if you have 2 or less lives, Fire Fist will deplete 4k on a character, and then you can KO a character with 0 power. So you can use Fire Fist to deplete 1 character, and then you KO the Rebecca on the side. I just play 2 because of space, but it's been working fine. Thankfully, you're not as dependent on it as you used to be. But yeah, still works very well. Cards to consider. Now, these are the cards you should consider playing. I'll explain why I don't play them. Next is the Yuta. Yuta is a film blocker, so she's searchable with Buena Fiesta, and many people like to play her instead of, for example, my Queen. Or even they just replaced the 2 blocker laws and Queen to play 3 Utas. Now, although she's searchable and she's a very, very powerful card mid and even late game against yellow decks and red decks, to be honest, she's very good mid game against every deck, but on late game she becomes very useful against the yellow and red color. Now, the reason why I don't play her is I believe, well, since I already have the Queen, I believe she's too expensive and I don't really need her that much, so I just play the 2 blocker laws and 1 Queen instead of her. And not only that, I believe the on block minus 1 Dawn effect can hurt you a bit more than you expect. Every time you block, you'll just taking away a Dawn in case you want to rest another 5k power character, and that many times will not be optimal. So I just prefer to play it simple, play with the blocker laws and Queens. But you should consider her, she's definitely a very strong card. She will save you many times, by the way. But she's too expensive for me. In my opinion, you don't really need her as much. Next is Windsmoke Yonji. This card is rising in popularity because every time you have Dawn, less Dawn on your field, or even equal actually, this card will become a 6k blocker. Not only that, this guy is a 4 cost blocker, which means you can combo it with your leader effect. This is why people love to play him actually, because you can just use your leader effect, play him on the field, and he'll become a 6k blocker. Now, I don't like playing this card because people like to replace the Kid blocker and sometimes the blocker law for this card, but people usually replace 4 copies of Kid for the Yonji. I just don't agree with that. I believe you need the regeneration of Kid, plus 1 cost. Having a 6k leader that regenerates on is just much better in my opinion and has better synergy with my strategy, which is very aggressive, which means I'm taking away Dawn many times, and having that extra regenerating 1 Dawn becomes more handy than having just a 6k blocker that has chemistry in my leader ability. So yeah. Next is Zoro Juro. Now, I hate this card. Many people like to play him. People usually don't play Ein and play 4 Zoro Juros. But let me just give you my opinion on him. I tried him. I really did. Many people gave me some tips on how to use him. But I don't know. There's no reason to play him over Ein. For me, there's no reason. The reason is, so he's a 3 cost, right? This means black color and many other colors actually can just remove him very easily. So most of the time you'll be dropping him, he won't regenerate on right away, you need to attack with him. And before you can even attack with him, people just remove him. Even if you regenerate 1 Dawn, he'll get removed next turn. There's it's almost impossible for you to regenerate more than 1 Dawn with his swing. With that said, why not just play Ein, which regenerates 1 Dawn like Zoro Juro. It's harder to take away because she's a 4 cost and a 5k power. And you know, that's it. Like, she regenerates 1 Dawn like him, and most of the time you'll be only regenerating 1 Dawn. She's harder to remove, and overall I believe she has much more chemistry with the rest of the deck than Zoro Juro. But you should consider him. Maybe some people like to play him more. If you play a bit slower, maybe he works very well. He's very good early game, I do admit that, but it depends. I still believe most of the time he'll either be a death card or a really good card. So I just prefer Ein, which will be a good card or a very good card overall. So yeah. Next is Ulti. Now, I do hate the Ulti page 1 combo. If you're playing this card, obviously you'll need to play the page 1. This is because when you play Ulti, you can take away 1 Dawn and you can play a page 1 from hand. So this helps you a lot with board building. Not only that, she's a 4 cost, this means you can use your leader ability. I've seen some crazy plays when you take away your Dawn, you put Ulti, take away another Dawn, and put a page 1. She is very good with slower strategies, as well as she being a 2k counter, but to me, she doesn't get that much value. Not only that, I found out that even with Reiju drawing 2, most of the time you won't be seeing Ulti and page 1 in your hand at the same time. Like, most of the time you'll be using Ulti for a 2k counter, maybe early and mid game, and page 1 you can just drop him as a vanilla play or taking him away with a 1k counter. So yeah, just prefer not playing them as they take away 6 to 8 spaces of the deck, so I just prefer not to play them. Next is a card that I've been debating to play. This is the Ace card. Now, you don't get a rush from the card, but is a 7 cost 7k power character that on play depletes 2 characters with 3k. Although on 7 cost, those 3k won't be able to remove bodies most of the time. It still is a very good ability, I'm just not gonna lie. The reason is because I'm very flashy and very aggressive with my deck. This card, the 7 cost of this card actually hurts my playstyle. I prefer to use those 7 Dawn to just play more board or even more cards that have less cost than this and make a more flashy play than just play this and most of the time pass turn, to be honest, like attack and pass turn. So yeah, but it is a very good card. I do consider giving him another try at 2 copies. I don't believe you should be playing 3 or 4. I believe 2 is the perfect number. Please do not play more. 3 and 4 is very bricky for your deck. Next is Gamma Knife. Now, you should play maybe 1 of this because this helps you on the yellow matchup. Now, this has become very useless on other matchups, like you just don't need it anymore. That's why I decided not to play it. But there are some people that play Searcher Law still and like to, or maybe actually dislike the yellow color so much that they play 2 or even 4 copies with the Searcher Law to make sure that they can remove everything late game and against yellow color. That's just it. Next is the Sanji. This Sanji is the card that I am still thinking of replacing Otama for. Now, this Sanji just has insane amount of value against Enel, which is one of the toughest matchups of your deck, if not the most toughest, if not the toughest actually. So instead of playing Otama, I was thinking of playing 3 of him, or even take away Queen to play 4 of him. For now, I'll keep trying Otamas. Now, I'm just gonna shout out a little card that's not in here, which is Radical Beam. Radical Beam is a card that, although is decreasing in popularity, is still somewhat popular, and this card will help you a lot against 6k leaders on mid to late game. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, this helps you survive a little bit more, but I just don't find the space to play it, and I prefer to just play more blockers instead of a Radical Beam. That's just it. But if you struggle a little bit with the 6k leaders, maybe you should consider playing it. But most people, by the way, only play 2 copies. There's very rare where people play 3 or 4 and 1. Just, you know, if you're thinking about playing 1, just don't play it, because you won't see it in your hand most of the time. Game plan. Now we'll be going over what my usually strategy on Red Purple Law is, what I like to do with him. But before I do that, I need to explain to you guys what the deck is. Now, the category the deck is placed in is on tempo deck. In case you don't know, tempo decks rely on building board and building pressure early to mid game to then overwhelm the opponent on late game, being able to finish the game pretty fast actually. So if you don't get a good early to mid game, you'll find yourself struggling throughout the game. So this is what the tempo deck is and how the Red Purple Law plays. So what you want to do in this game plan is very simple. I'm gonna be shouting out some cards here to explain with some examples of plays, but the game plan is pretty simple. Before you decide to do anything, you do what I said you need to do on your weaknesses, which was math. So you count the cards you have in hand, your Dawn, your active Dawn, your opponent's active Dawn and rested Dawn, their cards in hand, so on and so forth. And then you see the most optimal way to build insane amounts of board. When I mean insane, I mean you cannot place just one card. If you're playing just one card, swing and pass turn, or just swing, play one card and pass turn, you're doing it wrong. I'm very sorry, you need to make sure you're playing 2 to 3 characters per turn. Now, how do you do this? You use your leader ability. In OP06, the strategy is becoming much more popular on Red Purple Law, which is you use your ability to build board very fast, and not necessarily means you use your ability to take away any characters of your opponent's board. Obviously, if you have the opportunity, you will use it. That's why you play the 4 Gordons to raise max, 2 Firefis and Otamas and so on. But most of the time, you'll find yourself that you should, at the very least, use your leader ability to build board and keep building board. This will walk you into Starve, I'll get to that in a second, but you need to build as much board as possible. Now, how do I go about things? Very simple. Is the opponent's leader, I consider the opponent leader in 2 categories, which is easy removal / 6k leader, or none of that. So the way I go is, if the leader on the other side plays too much removal for you, which will make you, even making 2 cards on the field, very easy to be removed. Or if they are a 6k leader, this means if he's a 6k leader, most of the time you want to take lives. This means you need bigger swings, so using that Dawn to build board is not optimal as it is as to just attach to your leader and swing. So what you do is, if he's, let's just imagine he's on the category of big removal and 6k leaders. What you do is, on the very first turn, you decide to go first. I always decide to go first if these are on this category. So if they are big removal or 6k leaders, there's no need for me to deplete. I go first, but I don't put any character on the field with 1 Dawn. He'll just get removed. I mean, it's too easy. So what I do, I go first, I don't play anything, I pass turn. Most of the time they'll pass turn. And then I reach my second turn. My second turn will be played like this. I just attach the 3 Dawn and swing with 8 and make them take a life. Why do I do this? Well, if he's a big removal and 6k leader, whatever you play on 3 costs will be removed as well. So might as well make sure you take away a life, because you need to finish the game faster than anybody. Red Purple Law does not go well on late game. He's a tempo deck. This means you need to build up tempo, momentum on early and mid game to finish the game up on late game. This is why you do this. This is why you swing with 8k right off the bat. Now, let's imagine you went second on this. Why is it not optimal to go first and just make this 8k swing and not just go second? Now, in any other matchup, I would go second. Why? I'm just gonna give you an example on a play. I have Ein and Beppo on my hand. What I do on my second turn, so first turn, I most of the time will probably play maybe Rise Max, because again, if it's not on a category of big removal or 6k leaders, this means you can just place a card of 1 cost and you'll stay safe. So you can play Rise Max, you can play obviously a Buena Fiesta for the search if you have it in your first hand. But if you don't play anything, that's fine. You pass turn, they give you the first swing, that's fine. You take, most of the time you take that first life, and then you're at 4 dawn turn. Now, they don't have much removal. This means you can start building momentum. So again, let's imagine we have Ein and Beppo on our hand. What I do is I play Ein, she regenerates a dawn, that makes you at 5 dawn, then I just use my ability, take 3 dawn and play Beppo, he'll regenerate a dawn. I just use my ability by sacrificing only 1 dawn. Not only that, on the next turn when Beppo swings, he'll regenerate the dawn that I lost. So this is very optimal. We just managed to keep pretty much all of our dawn, and we have 3 attacks next turn, which is our leader, our Ein, and our Beppo. So this is very optimal against non-removal leaders, leaders and 6k leaders. Why is this not as optimal with removal? Now, let's imagine I did this exact same combo. Still very good, by the way, and if you're going into your third turn when you have 5 dawn, you can consider this, by the way. But most of the time, if it's a 6k leader, that means you'll have to attach 1 dawn in at least in 3 people, which means you'll be spending 3 dawn out of your 5 to just make even attacks will be very easily countered, and it's a very easy removal deck, means that next your 2 characters will be rested. So this means they can pretty much attach 2 dawn to the leader and swing into one of them, taking them away, because I mean it's just not worth it for you to take 2 cards as counter to just save 1 card, and then they'll just remove the other card with their effects. If it's a 6k leader, they can do this as well. As many 6k leaders, actually all of them have the red color, which makes them very good at removing 5k power characters or less. So they're pretty much probably only play 1 dawn into their card, swing 7, you need to take, and then they can, let's just imagine, play a Rush Zoro and attach another one and swing into, let's imagine, Beppo. You can protect Beppo, but it's still not optimal. So when, let's imagine now that we went with the 8k swing. This means you have 5k on next turn, right? You can play a Kid Blocker, make the leader effect and play Beppo or Ein, making you regenerate these 2 dawn and keep making 2 characters on the field. Why is this better? Because Kid is a 5 cost and 6k power. It's much harder to remove him, so people will probably have, and Ein, let's imagine it's Ein, will be a bit harder to remove as, for example, 3 cost or 4k power character. This means what the opponent will usually do is they'll either commit 3 cards from their hand to remove Kid, they'll commit maybe 2 cards to remove Ein, or they'll commit 3 if they have the very most, and I mean the very most perfect hand to remove both. If they have the most perfect hand and remove both, this means they won't have even a good hand for the rest of the turns. If they remove Kid, they are taking away 3 cards or 2 cards again if they have the most optimal, which takes value and makes him a blocker as you wish, as he is. And if they use 2 cards to remove Ein, or yeah, they need at least 2 cards to remove Ein, she gets the same value as Kid, and you still have Kid to use his ability to regenerate it on and have a 6k swing. So overall, they'll having those 5 dawn and maybe playing a Kid will be much more useful. Now let's imagine you don't have the Kid. This means you cannot do this combo, which is you would play the Kid and then the Ein or Beppo. Still much better. Let's imagine you do the exact same combo with Ein and Beppo. This leaves you 1 dawn. You can make a 6k swing, so if it's a big removal card, leader, sorry, this means they need to take that life or take away 1 of their 2k counters. If they use the 2k counters, this is where you get value. Big removal decks don't have many 2k counters, so this is incredible value for you, as if when you want to finish late game, they will not have 2k counters. So this is good. Now let's go for the 6k leaders. You make a 6k swing, you're taking a card out of hand, and you're playing the Yain and Beppo. Even if they somewhat, like on your third turn, your opponent, your character will still be active, so the 6k leader will not remove them. This means on your next turn, not only did you make a swing this turn, on your next turn you'll have 3 swings. So your overall is making 4 swings instead of when you're going second against 6k leaders, you'll be doing the 3 swings and then losing everything. So overall, you'll get much more value and you'll build much better tempo to your side. This is why I do this. I go first against big removals or 6k leaders because on early game I can build much more tempo for late game. And if you're not against any of these type of leaders, you'll just go second and play normally, and most of the time you'll just overwhelm your opponents with 5k swings and just building blockers and removing cards from their field. So you need to build momentum by building as much board as you can. So this just to give you an example on how the game plan goes. You need to take into account how you build your early game. So your mid game you already have momentum, so in late game you only need to finish the opponent off. Starting hand. Now this is the starting hand that you wanna go for. I'm gonna explain everything, do not worry. So I decided to divide this into 4 categories. Sorry. First is the necessary 1, second is necessary 2, then there's perfect additions, and then there's good additions. Now, necessary 1 and 2, you need to have one of these cards in your hand at the start. Let's go over necessary 1 then. Necessary 1 is early Dawn regeneration. You have Beppo and Shashin Penguin. I do prefer, by the way, seeing Shashin Penguin better on early game than Beppo, but if I have the Ein in my hand, which is the perfect additions, I do like to see Beppo as well, because you can do that combo that I explained you earlier, which will regenerate you a lot of Dawn. Sometimes you'll see only Beppo and you won't see Ein. Depending on your hand, which we'll be going over in the other categories, you can keep him, you can keep that hand, but you need to see at least one of these 2 in your hand. Very needed. Next is necessary 2. Necessary 2 is power depletion cards. Now, I told you that most of the strategy, you won't be doing it to remove cards on the field and using your leader ability more to build board. Still, you need the power depletion, because even you use, as I said, you use your leader ability to build a good amount of board early, you're still gonna need power depletion on mid game. This usually on early game, usually on your third turn. So these are the cards you need to see in hand. You need to see at least 1 Raise Max, at least, or 1 Garden, or 1 Fire Feast, or 1 Promo Law. You need to see one of these. If you need, you can then use your power depletion with the card that you got in necessary 1, which is Dawn Regen. Usually, again, I'm gonna stress this a lot, which is I usually prefer Shashin Penguin, because on early game, he just regenerates 2 Dawn, which is much better. You need to have these cards in hand, because if you play your first turn right or second turn right, as I said, building board, your third turn, you will want to see these power depletions to build more momentum. After your third turn, you will start building so much momentum because you got the most optimal hand and you did this place, that your opponent will just be overwhelmed. He will not react optimally. So having 1 card of necessary 1 and 1 card of necessary 2 is a must. If you don't have any of these cards in your starting hand, just mulligan. It does not matter if you think you can play, no, you need to see at least these cards. I'm sorry, I actually tried to play without these cards, but you truly need. Now let's go into perfect additions. The perfect addition is, if I don't have them in my starting hand, I'll think about it of mulligan or not mulligan. Again, this is considering that we do have necessary 1 and 2. And if I don't see them, I'll think really hard if I want to keep the hand. Now, Ein is the very first example of perfect addition. I already told you how much chemistry she has with the Beppo and Shashin Penguin to build board. You could, this is where it gets a bit complicated, because although she's not in the necessary 1, depending on your board, maybe, just maybe, and this depends on the matchup on the other side, she can make as the necessary 1, which means she can be your very only card as for Dawn regeneration for early game. you need to consider that if you're going to risk it, you need to make sure that you get, when you top deck another regeneration card, because if she's the only regeneration card, usually this is not optimal. This is usually why I mulligan and why I did not put her on necessary 1. But if I get necessary 1 and 2 and then I have her in my starting hand, and then let's just imagine the other 2 cards are dead, most of the time I actually keep that deck. Most of the time I actually can play with that hand, so the perfect additions will help you a lot playing through the game, even if you don't have the most optimal hand, but if you keep the necessary 1 and 2 in hand. Next is Reiju. You don't necessarily need to see her in starting hand, but as I said, she covers up she covers up every weakness of the deck, so having her in hand is very optimal. You do really want to see her. This is why she's second place to Ein. This is just because I really like to abuse the combo where I play Ein and then take away Dawn and play other regeneration cards. But if you have, for example, Shashin Penguin, you can, for example, play something that you have in your hand, take away the Dawn, play sorry, what the hell am I doing? You play the Reiju, most of the time, she'll just give you 2 Dawn, then you take away 2 cards and play the Shashin Penguin. This is very specific and you won't be using this combo, but it is an example. Sometimes you can play another card, take away the 3, and just play the Reiju. Sometimes you'll be playing Ein. Ein will generate 1 Dawn, then you take 3 and play Reiju. Reiju will draw you 2 cards, and your leader ability just costs 2 Dawn, which is better than 3, obviously. 3 does hurt you a lot. So yeah, and those 2 cards will come in handy as you probably will draw into regeneration for later turns. So yeah, right next to Ein, you do want to see Reiju a lot. And third is Captain Kid. So I gave you examples why Captain Kid is very good. Obviously it depends on the matchup. Against big removals and 6k leaders, he's a very clutch card. So is in the perfect additions. Not only that, even let's imagine you go second in a non-big removal leader or 6k leader, he still is a perfect addition because you play normally. This means, again, I'm gonna keep using the example of Ein and Beppo. You make Ein and Beppo, and your next turn, your curve play will be that Captain Kid. So what you do is you play Captain Kid, you use your ability, again, build even more board, your Kid will give you 1 extra active Dawn, and then your Beppo will still regenerate 1 Dawn with this swing. So yeah, he's still very, very optimal. So you do want to see he's a perfect addition to the hand if you have necessary 1 and 2. And next is the good additions. Now, these are cards that you don't necessarily need to see. Actually, you don't really need to see them, but they're really good additions, especially if you already have necessary 1, necessary 2, and 1 card of perfect additions. If you have all the other 3 and then you see one of these cards, very good, very optimal. But most of these cards will be very specific for matchups. First is Buena Fiesta, is just a very good 2k counter for early game, or a searcher in early game if you really need him, but you don't really want to see him on the starting hand. You do prefer seeing everything else that I just mentioned on necessary 1, 2 and perfect additions, but it's still a very good addition to the hand in case you have a good hand. Next is Zoro, is very optimal because if you have necessary 1, 2 and perfect additions, you having him in hand will give you even an extra pressure, and not only that, he's very good countering some other decks with his pressure, so he's a very good addition. Next is Shiraya, which is in 3rd place. Now, why is he behind Zoro and Buena Fiesta? This is just because I prefer to be aggressive, and Shiraya is not really all-around aggressive card. He is very good to see, and if you can play him early, again, playing him early will help you a lot. But it's not something that I would prefer to see over Zoro or Buena Fiesta. I would just like to have that search or have that extra aggression. But again, he's very good on specific matchups, and if you can get him out early game, you should keep him in hand. And next is Blocker Law. This is, as I said, he controls the hand size of the opponent, and depending on the color you're going against, he's very good addition. Again, he's a good addition, and you need to see the necessary 1, 2 and perfect additions in order to even consider keeping the hand where he is in your hand. So do keep that in mind. So this is your starting hand. This is the graph I decided to use. You need to see at least the necessary cards on 1 and 2, and then the rest will be subjective to the opponent you're playing, or what you prefer to see, or what the strategy is. So yeah, but all around, this is the hand you want to see. Matchups. Now we'll be going over the matchups. I'll be going over what I believe will be the most popular leaders. First of all, it's Blue-Black Sakazuki. Now, Blue-Black Sakazuki, I already told you how to go against him, which is you go first, and then you make that 8k swing. Then you need to absolutely make sure that you are playing at least 2 cards from hand to the field. This man is the biggest leader when it comes to removal, so if you do not do this and you find that you have a dead hand, this means you did not follow the starting hand properly, which I mentioned previously, obviously. So you do need to keep putting insane board. When it comes to starve, it's actually not bad when you start starving against him. Obviously, you do need to control your hand. If you see yourself going down on hand size, maybe just start making big swings with your leader and don't build board and let him play into your life to give you cards into hand. But most of the time you actually will find that you will not starve from him, because if he does not use his cards to remove your board and instead starts to try and starve you, you'll see that it is not optimal for his strategy. His most optimal path is to try remove your board as well as building board and then making swings onto you and surviving till late game where there you're dead. If he does not do this, if you do what I said, which is make the 8k swing on your second turn, you will see that you'll start to overwhelm him, and at that point he cannot even think about starving you because he needs to remove board and you'll just keep swinging and he just can't do anything if you overwhelm him. This will be the case if you're playing optimal in most matchups. Something that I'm gonna mention obviously is if you do not go first, if you do not choose to go first. If for some reason he goes first and you're going second. Most of the time they do like to go second because they can play brand new, but thanks to the new card Tashigi, which is a 1-cost search, they can think about stealing your most optimal curve plays, which is by going first. So they'll play Tashigi and pass turn. You have 2 Dawn, don't play anything, and pass turn. Then they'll do whatever they need to do. They'll probably give you 1 card to hand from life, and then you reach your second turn. Now you can make, for example, the Ein and Beppo combo, and he'll probably remove 1 of them. You can do this, but this is where the starting hand will come into play, because you can do this combo. This combo will help you a lot, and even if he removes both, he'll spend a lot of cards from hand, unless again he has the most optimal hand, which even for Blue-Black Sakazuki, which has insane consistency, will be very hard. But let's just imagine that he removes 1. You'll still have to use a lot of cards just to remove 1. This is still good for you. You can still make 2 swings, and you just need to remember, if you're not playing in your most optimal starting turn, this is the best you can do. So this is the time where you will like maybe to see Zoro to make that extra swing, or maybe you'd like to again see maybe a promo law. But most of the time I do like to see Zoro if I'm not going first, if I'm going second. Because and again, I do like to see Rain and Beppo, because if they remove 1, then on next turn I can pretty much play Zoro and make that sneaky 5k swing that they would not expect. But yeah, most of the time you need to build board, but you need to take into account, because you're not making that 8k swing on the beginning. The most optimal thing you can do is play 2 characters that you normally would and hope they can only remove 1. If they can remove 2, well, tough luck. This is where again Zoro comes in handy, because his rush will help you take away his board or making pressure for his life. So this is one I get to, which is cards that you really want to see in your hand specifically against Sakazuki. Most of the time you like to see necessary 1, 2 and perfect editions, but some other cards that you really want to give priority to is the Blocker Kid, Ein, Beppo, and then, this is very important, Rush Zoro and Fire Fist. Rush Zoro and Fire Fist counter Blue-Black Sakazuki a lot, so having him in hand with the other necessary 1 and perfect editions, because Fire Fist does cover your necessary 2, will be very good. But these two cards, Renora Zoro, Brush, and Fire Fist, is cards that you'll see that will have very good value against this matchup. So you will like to see them too. Next is Enel. The Enel matchup, you need to go second. I'm sorry, you need to steal his curve plays. His curve plays are going second, where he plays his Searcher. I'm forgetting Shura, I remember, where he plays Shura to then get Ohm and or maybe Holly, and then on his second turn you'll probably be playing Home and making combo with Holly. So at that point he's starting to make a lot of board for you to remove, and then he can actually starve you because you'll only swing with leader and leave his characters up, the insane amount of characters he has up, to just swing into your board and keep starving you until he has Yamato, Katakuris, and 7 cost Mom to drop to just start taking away lives for free and regenerating lives. So yeah, if you're playing first, well, tough luck. But I'll get to that in a second. But you do want to go second, and you are safe to pretty much play normally against him once you go to second. You play, if you have a Race Max or Gordon, you can just play him on your first turn, or Buena Fiesta and Race Max if you have them both. And you can play turn because you're going second, you have 2 Dawn. And on the next turn, you do like to see promo law. But let's see in case, and this is the play I need to explain. Although I'm not playing Sanji and I am considering Sanji, it is because of this play. And so I'm going to explain it to you guys in case you are playing the Sanji. Let's imagine you do steal his curve play, you are going second, you need to see Sanji in hand. Let me tell you why. You get Sanji, and let's imagine the other most optimal card, which is Rush Zoro. You get them both in hand. What you do is, on your first turn you have 2 Dawn, you play the Sanji, best turn. Then they're on 3 Dawn, so they'll maybe play a Brûlée, maybe they'll play a Holly, maybe they won't play anything. But you should expect these 2 cards in case they are, well, because that's the only thing they can play on their curve play. They can attach 3 Dawn on the Shura and then swing with the leader, but you can counter out to one of those attacks pretty easily, so yeah. So he does whatever he wants to. He passes turn. Most of the time you lost a life here because he swung first. If he does not swing, it's okay. The play is still very valuable. So next is your second turn. You have 4 Dawn. What you do is you swing with your leader and he'll probably take that life. What happens next is you play that Rush Zoro that I told you about and you swing again. You'll probably counter it. If he has a Brûlée, he'll block it. If he does not, if he counters it and he has a Brûlée and leaves for Sanji, it's still good because you're getting so many resources out of his hand. So this combo has good value either way. So you swing with leader, let's imagine he takes. You swing with Zoro, maybe 6k with Zoro, he counters, and then you just use your Sanji ability to take one of your own lives to hand, which counters Starve, and then you make a 7k swing. If they do not have the Brûlée, they will need to take away that life. 7k is too big. And now you are at 2 lives or 3 lives, and he's at 2 lives, which is very optimal now. So you just accelerate the game, so he's very less likely to see Yamato, Katakuri, and being able to play them, because now you can play a bit more normally and build board and overwhelm him with attacks. So yeah, but I will give you one heads up. If you do manage to put him on 2 lives, do not attack his lives just yet. What I like to do against him is, once I make him go to 2 lives, on the next turn, what I'll be going is, I'll be focusing only on board, and I'll pass turn. I'll just focus 1 turn on his board and pass turn. Even if that turn, on next turn he plays Yamato, that Yamato will not regenerate a life. If he plays Katakuri, it's optimal for us, because he needs to choose a card to either regenerate us 1 life, or he needs to take 1 card off his board to regenerate 1 life for him. So either way, this is much more optimal to just leave him at 2 lives, and then just make swings on the board, and on the next turn you make swings to his life again and you overwhelm him with attacks. That's it. And Sanji will just help you so much to accomplish that very early, right on your second turn. So yeah, this is why Sanji is very powerful against Enel. I've talked, if you have to go first, if they do get to choose and they go, probably they'll go second, because that's their curve plays. If they go first, that can either mean that they are playing the Big Mom Pirates variant, which is not as strong, so you can play normally against that matchup, But or sometimes there are some very little players that do prefer playing Enel on first turn, even playing Skyazon. I don't understand why, but if they do that, it still is very optimal for you, because you can still do that Sanji combo if you're playing Sanji. And if not, thankfully, I'm gonna be playing Otama to kind of take away his board much better. So yeah. But let's imagine they do get to go second and you're going first. This is where Rush Zoro will have again insane value. Every time you're against a non-optimal matchup, Rush Zoro will come in to rescue you. Not only that, your blocker law as well. But thankfully, if you do have to go first, you can play Zoro safely and make 2 swings, 2 5k swings on your turn. So you play a Zoro, swing, and then swing with your leader. If they take those 2 lives, which they probably will do, because there's a strategy on Enel that takes advantage of taking lives early, and then just using the insane amount of hand size to counter everything else. But if they counter the Zorojuru and then you attack with your leader, and they'll probably take 1 and discard 1 card, even if he gets removed next turn, still good. He managed to make himself take away resources, and he managed to make himself a blocker by just taking away that swing. So yeah, Rusoro will be very good if you're not playing Sanji and if you do not get to go second. Another card is the Blocker Law. This card has insane value, which because I already told you, Enel likes to take away his lives early to build hand size. This means they'll be in range of your Blocker Law effect, so once you drop Blocker Law, you take away 1 down and they just discard cards from their hand. And so that's optimal, because they don't have resources for late game, which makes you being able to finish the game much easier. Another card that I will shout out is the Promo Law. Promo Law counters not only Enel, but every single yellow color matchup. His effect of taking away 2k is very, very, very useful on early and mid game. And against Enel is very good, because Enel does like to build board on early to mid game, and those bodies normally are 5k, so they'll be in range of your leader effect with Promo Law. So he comes in clutch by dropping him, taking away a board, and then you'll have an extra swing for next turn. So the 3 cards I want to shout out against Enel are the Zoro Rush, the Blocker Law, and the Promo Law. Very good. Next is Moria. Moria, again, Moria does not have much removal. He only has 2 cards of removal. Let's imagine 8 copies of removal. So this makes him very hard to either place him on the category that I mentioned, which is the big removal or 6k leaders, or the normal matchups, every other matchup. I will put him in the big removal category, because Moria strives to use his trash to recycle cards and play it from trash, and then he can remove. So which means if you do not bottom deck with your leader effect, which is you should try to do it, and you have to send them to trash, on next turn he will be reviving them and removing more board. So how do you go against it? So you go first, I already told you, you make the 8k swing, and then once again your Promo Law comes in clutch. But what you want to do is the board they'll build, you want to look at the board, the cards that say they will remove a card from the field, you bottom deck those, and the rest you can send them from trash. This is the strategy that you'll be going over Moria. I know it's very simple, but it's the one that works. You need to look at their Lucci, and at their, I don't remember the name of the guy, but I'll put an image of his image here. You need to remove these 2. These 2 are usually the 2 removal cards that they'll play. If they play more, well, tough luck, you couldn't have guessed it. But yeah, most of the time what they want to do is they want to play Lucy and the other guy, and then what they want to do is if you send them to trash, they'll play Rebecca or the Moria to revive them to keep taking away your board. Not only that, Moria leader effect will help him build a lot of board. So what you do, I already told you, you remove the cards to bottom deck, the ones that remove cards from the field. When it comes to the rest, to the board building part of the strategy of Moria, you need to control your attacks. If you're going for board, I'm gonna tell you right now, you need to make sure that that guy is going. or at least he's taking away 2 cards out of his hand. Because if that attack fails, he'll use that attack on next turn to swing into the guy you used to swing at him. So you need to make sure to take away the board, and then you just try to go maybe, you know, 1 big attack into board and then 1 small attack into life, and then you remove the guys that I mentioned. That's pretty much, you need to find the right balance. If you manage to find the right balance, you will start overwhelming him, and at that point you'll reach a point, by the way, where you just look and you're like, okay, now he's pretty bad on hand size and he's low on cards on the field and on life, and then you just start playing normally, which is overwhelm him, ignore the board, and start going for many attacks into his life. He will not have many counters because he's a black color. Black color does not have many 2k counters, so, or not many counters in general. So going wide, making more 5k swings instead of making the 6 or 7k swings, unless you're trying to finish game, will be optimal. Go wide once you reach that point. Up until then, you need to use some attacks for board, which you need to make sure that you take the board, and then you can make smaller swings into life. Now, some cards that you want to see in hand. Promoa is still very good, because you can use them on the... I still forget the name of the guy. You're seeing an image right now. He's still very good for you to bottom deck him. Another card is Blocker Law, which keeps his hand size in check. And then the other one is the Fire Fist, because they play Rebecca, which means you get deplete power and then take away Rebecca. So yeah, very good. But as for fire strategy, you just need to divide your attacks into board and into life. Make sure your attacks on board are bigger and your attacks to life can be the smaller ones, and then you'll reach a point that you can just go wide. That's the strategy. Pretty simple. Let's get on to the next one. Next one is Perona. Perona, what you do to counter Perona is you pick up your closest gun and you put it into your mouth. I'm just kidding, but the matchup does make you wanna do that. Perona will be very annoying because of her leader ability. Her leader ability directly counters your leader ability. You build board by playing 4 cost per characters. She can just, without even using a Dawn, she can, I think so, I don't know. She can pretty much just rest up your newly played 4 cost characters. So let's just give you an example. If you make the Ein Beppo combo, she can probably rest Ein or Beppo. Most of the time they'll go for Beppo because Beppo just has more value. They'll rest Beppo, they'll attach 2 Dawn, attack Beppo, you need to let them go, and then they'll just build Searchers and pass turn. Although you still have 1 card on the field, not optimal, because Ein will not regenerate you any Dawn still, and they're already building Dawn, and they'll just start to starve you and starve you and starve you by just resting your characters and swinging over them, or using the green and black color combo. In case you don't know, Perona is black and green. So she'll just use the black part of her deck to deplete the cost, use the effect of the leader to rest once that card gets to 4 costs or less, and then they'll play a green card, which most of the time they have an on-play effect, which lets them KO certain cards that are rested with a certain cost. So yeah, that's pretty much the combo. What she'll do is she'll start doing that, and that will build very big bodies that you cannot remove all of them, and when she reaches late game, you'll just be starved out, and then she can just start swinging slowly, very slowly into your life, and there's nothing you can do. So she goes into the big removal / 6k leaders category. You go first, you make that 8k swing, sorry, and sometimes, and this is very rare, but sometimes I even on the third turn, on the third turn, I even don't play board. I just try to remove her board. This will probably confuse the Perona players, and even if they are ready for that, they cannot play as they would like to play, which would be optimally for them. If they're not playing optimally, and you are not playing optimally, you guys are on even ground. because you will not be playing optimally either way against this matchup. So might as well make them not play optimally as well, and that makes the game 50-50. So what you do is you make that 8k swing, and then you try to concentrate your resources more or not swinging, but to remove her board. So the cards that you really would like to see is Raise Max, Gordon, Promo Law, and Gamma, Fire Punch, sorry, what? Gamma Punch? And Fire Punch. Or Otama. Otama, this is the matchup where Otama comes the most clutch, is this. So you need to have good power depletion, so you make sure removal. Once you start removing her board, you will start making your normal combos. Again, I'll give the example of Ein and Beppo. You'll start building much board, and because her initial starve did not work, she'll start going into starve there herself. So, which means is she'll not have cards to deplete the cost, or she'll not have many cards to play to build board, and she can just take away one of your board. Let's imagine she takes away the Beppo like she should. You'll still have Ein and many other cards to play, and she'll not have as board. She'll just not have board. Once you reach that point, that's the point you do the same with Moria. You play normally, you start building insane board, and you start being extremely aggressive. She's green, so you need to watch out for the green color aspect, which is she'll be playing blockers, but those blockers, fortunately, on Perona are very easy to remove. And on the black side of her color of her deck, she won't have many counters. So once you reach that point where she does not have many cards to remove your board, and you start going wide, you'll see that she will just get overwhelmed. But as like Moria, you need to reach that very certain point of the match. Green, yellow, Yamato. This is the last matchup that I'm going to talk about. I'm already losing my voice. But this is also a deck that counters you. So this does not have good insane removal, but she's very catchy. So her effect is she has double attack, which means as soon as she gets a swing with her leader, you take away 2 lives, and you only have 4. So that's already not optimal. Not only that, she has an alternate effect, which is when your opponent is at 3 lives or less, you can attach up to 2 rested Dawn. So she can have additional 2 Dawn to make bigger swings. And you, as a red purple law player, even if you have a good amount of blockers, there will be a time where you won't have blockers, because she'll just start making more 7k swings, and you have to use her blockers, and then you won't have counters, and at that time the game just went up to shit. So she's very catchy. She's probably the most catchiest matchup that you'll have. You need to try and defend that first swing. So that first swing with leader. If you can pass 2 to 3 turns by defending her swings, you need to let her third to fourth swing come. You cannot just stop every single swing. So if you can stall a little bit of that effect, you already be playing. She won't be playing optimally. So you do that. Then what you do is you do like to play like you would play with Moria, which is if you go for board, you make sure you destroy the board, and then you can make smaller swings into life. The only catch here is you gotta try to defend the 2 first attacks from her on the turns with her leader. Most of the time, I've seen a very insane strategy, but it works against red purple. They normally just attach Dawn, leader, swing, you defend, okay, then you pass turn, then you play your turn, you pass turn, then it's their turn again. What they do is they do the exact same. They attach all Dawn and swing again. If you see that, just play normally. Start building board and just be very optimally. You take that attack. If you see her making that try of that strategy the second time, you're like, okay, I cannot stall this, so I'm just gonna take the 2 lives. And then next turn you just start playing normally, because if she does this means she won't be building board. So at that time you can go wide. If you can defend, she'll start building a board, and she'll have to start attacking with her characters on board, and at that time you're like, okay, time to go for the Moria strategy, which is you make big swings onto the board, make sure you take away a board. You can use your leader effect to take board as well. Remember, you have Race Max, Gordon, Fire Fist, and so on and so forth. So you take as much board, and once you take her entire board 1 or 2 turns in a row, her hand size will be very low, and she will not be able to make as many swings as she would want to. At that time, you can play normally and go wide again. So let's just resume this. If you need to try to defend her early swings from leader on the first 2 to 3 turns. If you manage that, you'll start going for board like Moria. Bigger swings into board, smaller swings into life. Try to divide and conquer. If she does not go that path and just starts attaching the all the Dawn onto the leader and swing every turn, by the second turn you should realize that and say, okay, she's not building board, let's just take those 2 lives, and then she'll just pass turn, and then you go wide, you play normally from that. That's what you need to take into account. So, cards that you really want to see. Reiju. This is one of the matches that Reiju comes very, very, very clutch, because if you can keep drawing cards, you'll be more likely to see blockers, which will help you to ease up those attacks. Or 2k counters. Another card is Raise Max and Gordon and Fire Fist. Promo Law is good, but it's not as optimal. So the cards you really want to see is Reiju, Raise Max or Gordon, and Rush Zoro. Just in case, that rush does help you a lot of times to take away a board. So yeah, I won't be showing you replays, I'll leave that into my future videos, but this was the guide. Thank you so much for watching, I hope this helped. If you guys have any questions, please do comment, I'll answer all of them. I'm very sorry if I wasn't clear in my explanation, I believe I was somewhat clear, but if I wasn't and you guys have any other questions, do ask away. Like and subscribe if you enjoy Red Purple Law, and goodbye.